Well, hey folks, and welcome to Solar Cabin Channel. Well, it happened again, reported this morning in the news. Another fire caused by an e-bike battery being charged. This time it was in Queens, and it caused the death of two young people. And it's just very sad. It makes me angry, sick to my stomach, because I love e-bikes. Been promoting them for a long time. Here on YouTube and in other places, and I'm concerned that people are just not understanding the dangers of charging up an e-bike battery, and they're not just using common sense when they're charging them up. So again, I'm going to go over some really basic, simple precautions that if you take, the chances of you ever having an e-bike battery fire are way, way down, okay? So let's take the risk out of this. Let's educate yourselves to owning an e-bike and the responsibility that comes with it. And also, if you have friends and family that are using e-bikes, share this information, okay? Now, first thing, when you have an e-bike, you're going to have a battery that goes with it. And most of them, the batteries are removable. They may look something like this, or they may look something like this. This is from the aerial. This is from a different bike here. Now, the first thing you need to know, when you're charging your batteries, you're going to get a battery that comes with the e-bike. That is the only batteries that you should use with your e-bike, okay? They are not interchangeable. Obviously, because of size and shape, you can't put this battery into this e-bike. But there are batteries out there that look very similar to this. There are e-bike batteries that look very similar to this. Do not try to replace the battery that came in your e-bike with one just because it looks like it, okay? They are different models, different brands, and a lot of times batteries that are sold like from eBay and other places like that may come from places that do not sell quality batteries. So only use the battery that comes with your e-bike. That's rule number one. Rule number two, only use the charger that comes with your e-bike and battery, okay? Now here, let me show you an example here. These are two different charge controllers. Now from looking at them, could you tell which one goes to which battery? Same size, except for some ridges on the top of this one. You really can't tell the difference because they don't say anything on them of which one goes to which. But they're completely different batteries, okay? This is a 52 volt battery, goes with this charger here. This is a 48 volt battery, goes with this charger here. If you get these mixed up and you get them on the wrong battery, you could really cause serious damage to the battery, and you can cause a fire or an explosion. So if you have more than one charger, the first thing you want to do, go and mark them clearly with paint or whatever you need to do. Mark them and mark the battery it goes with so that you know which charger goes with which battery. Now, unfortunately, some people go and buy a used e-bike or something like that, and maybe the charger or the charger fails, and they go and look for a charger, and they think they're getting the right one. And a lot of people don't understand that just because a charger will plug into a battery doesn't mean it's made for that battery. You have to look on here, and you have to understand the volts and the current that is being produced and match it to the battery. Do not use controllers that are not matched to your bike. Now, I recommend if you need a new controller, or if your controller stopped working, contact the company that produces the battery and e-bike and get a controller directly from them. Don't go buy secondhand controllers trying to match them. If they're off even a little bit, it can mess up the battery, do damage to the battery, and start a fire and explosion. So that's rule number two. Rule number one, only use the batteries that come with your e-bike. Rule number two, only use the charge controllers that come with your e-bike, okay? If you do those two things, the chances of you having a fire have now went way down. And that's what happened in this fire in Queens. They said is that they were using a charger that was not designed for that e-bike and battery. They were using the wrong charger. Now, exactly how they come up with the wrong charger, who knows? Maybe they had two different chargers. It was kids that was probably charging it up. And this is going to be rule number three. The kids may have been charging it up. grabbed the wrong transformer by mistake, the wrong charger, and plugged it into the battery, because everybody around here now probably has 2 or 3 of these chargers for different things around their house, because they match a lot of other things that may take them. Even power tools and stuff like that now use these brick chargers and power stations. So you want to make sure that you have them clearly marked that they are for the right battery. So now the other thing is, before you charge your battery, always do an examination of the battery before you even stick it on the charger. Because what happens is the cases on these can get broke. They can have damaged connections. They can have water damage if you've happened to get it really wet. And they can be cold or too hot for charging. Rule number 3, always do a physical examination of the battery. If it's got any damage visible on the outside, if it's been cracked, if the case is cracked, is showing any damage whatsoever, do not charge it. If it's cracked on the outside, there's probably damage on the inside. I know they're expensive and it's a real hassle to replace a battery, but contact the manufacturer for the e-bike and get you a new battery. Don't try to charge a damaged battery. If you've dunked your battery and got it really wet, don't charge it up, okay? If the water's inside it, you've pretty much damaged that battery. You're going to have a fire if you try to charge it up, and the battery's going to be damaged anyway. Get you a new battery. Now, if it is very cold, if you've had your bike and you was riding outside and it was very cold, or you had this stored someplace where it was very cold, let it warm up to room temperature before you charge it, okay? The other thing, the opposite of that is also true. If you've been riding really hard, or you've been out in the sunshine and your bike's been sitting out and the battery is really hot, let it cool down to room temperature before you charge it. That's rule number 3. Check for damage. Make sure that it is room temperature before you charge it up, okay? Rule number 4, always charge in a safe place, away from flammable materials. Now, a lot of parents and a lot of times they let their kids be responsible for charging their e-bikes. I don't recommend that. Really, an adult should always be in charge of charging up e-bikes. Don't let your kids charge them up in their bedrooms. Don't charge them up sitting on top of a sofa. Put them in a place, an area where it is less likely that if they did happen to catch on fire, that they would set other things on fire, like a laundry room, on a tile floor, or, someplace away from flammable materials. Outside, if possible. You can charge e-bike batteries outside, away from the house, a distance if you need to. That would make them a lot safer. But most importantly, keep them away from flammable materials and flammable objects. And rule number 5 is to monitor your batteries while you're charging. Do not charge them overnight. Do not leave them on the charger after they're completely charged up, and always monitor the batteries. You can monitor them one way is just by touching the battery whilst charging. A battery should not get hot. It may get just a little warm, but it should not get hot whilst charging up, okay? The same thing for the power for the chargers. They may get warm. You may want to keep them in a cool area. Some people have even put fans on them to keep them cooler, but they should not get so hot that you can't touch them, okay? And if it gets really hot, unplug it. Let it cool down to room temperature. Charge it up again. You don't have to charge your battery continuously in order for it to charge up. You can unplug them, let the battery and let the controller and let the charger cool down, and then plug it back in and charge it. So the most important thing is that you monitor what's going on. If the battery feels hot, or if they've been left on the charger, which you should not do, unplug it, okay? Let them cool down completely. Then charge them back up. Some people will do a balance charge once in a while, which means they leave them on the charger longer to balance the batteries. If you're doing that, only do it when you are there and you can watch and monitor the batteries, because overcharging is one of the primary causes of a fire in a battery or an explosion in a battery. So if you're balancing, make sure that you are there and monitor it. Otherwise, when it's full and it shows full on the battery or shows full on the charger, take it off the charger. You don't need to do a balanced charge all the time. Once every 3 months or so is plenty for a balanced charge. Otherwise, just charge them up to full, take them off the charger. Now, one last thing, and this applies a lot to people that are using their e-bikes for some type of commerce. They're delivering pizzas or whatever. they're hot swapping their e-bike batteries. That has also been a primary cause of e-bike fires, because the batteries never have a chance to cool down. They're taking one battery out and swapping it for another battery so they can get on the road. And I understand they're trying to make their money. You know, that's their business. But when you do that, when you're hot swapping batteries, those batteries never have an opportunity to cool down in between being charged up. And so then you're adding to the heat when you stick it on the charger. And so you're going to build up that heat, and eventually you're going to have a failure. And believe me, if you have a fire, you're going to lose a lot, besides also not having your transportation for running your business. So if you have to do more than one battery, I would suggest having 3 batteries, having one cooled down and charged before swapping them out, if you have to do that, okay? Or take the time it only takes 15-20 minutes. I know it's a long time, but let them cool down to room temperature before you stick them on your charger. If you do that, you'll have a lot less risk of having a fire. And finally, rule number 6 is buy good batteries and buy good e-bikes. If you're buying cheap e-bikes with cheap batteries in them, a lot of times the reason they're cheap is because they are not UL listed. I do recommend that you get UL listed batteries. But we all know that certain countries don't produce sometimes quality products. They produce them at a cheap price. So, you're going to get what you pay for. Buy a quality e-bike from a good company that has a good reputation. Look for UL listed batteries, and you shouldn't have a problem with your batteries or ever have a risk of a fire. And one more thing, everyone who has an e-bike or not should have a fire extinguisher. One of these little numbers here, right here. This is made by Kid. This is a Class A, B, or C fire extinguisher. You should always have a fire extinguisher. It should be big enough that you could actually put out a fire, not one of those little ones. And you want to look for a Class B fire extinguisher. Now, usually they are rated Class A, B, or C. As long as it says B on it, that's a Class B rated fire extinguisher. That is what is needed if you ever do have a fire, which is considered an electrical fire from an e-bike battery or scooter battery, anything like that. So make sure you have one of these. You kids out there, if your parents don't have a fire extinguisher, you say, Mom and Dad, I want a fire extinguisher just in case. And they have them show you how to use it. They're pretty easy. Pull a pin and aim it at the base of the fire. Always have a fire extinguisher, you guys. Make sure that your kids and your teenagers understand and know how to use them and when to use them. All right, folks, I hope that helps. Please be careful out there. Ride safely, wear your helmets, charge properly. Have a great day.